Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee. We have a quorum with Mr. Price and myself, Paul Peretz, as chair. And we have two items on this agenda. I'm going to ask after public comment that item 1, the reappointment of Mr. Anthony Miller to the Employee Relations Board, be approved on consent, but we will have that as an item up for discussion as well. So if we could begin public comment on these two items, I'll give 1 minute each for the items and 1 minute for general public comment.
Will the caller with the last four numbers 1633 please press *6 to unmute?
Thank you.
And caller, and would you state your name and the item you'd like to speak on?
Yeah. My name is Jim Jensvold, and the item number is 17-0413.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I am a former member of the Animal Services Commission, and I've been involved with nonprofit work in the Los Angeles area for 20 years. And I'm the president of Democrats for the Protection of Animals. But I'm speaking as an individual, not as a representative for many of those entities. And I would just like to register my support for this matter. When I was a commissioner, we were very interested in seeing this thing resolved, and I think it's finally going to be resolved, and I'm very grateful for all the hard work everybody's done on this.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Jensvold.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the last four numbers 9719. Please press *6 to unmute.
This is Travis Longcore. I'm the science director of the Urban Wildlands Group on item number 2.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak at the hearing today. We have a letter in the file including a additional assessment of the city's responses to the problems that we've identified with the population model that underlies the final environmental impact report. That model is demonstrably erroneous and inaccurate and cannot be used to constitute substantial evidence on which the city can make an argument that this project would have adverse impacts. But even if we accept that the model is an approximation of reality, its own results point to a much more effective policy choice of directing available funds toward owned cat spay-neuter instead of directing that toward unowned feral and stray cats. In particular, what the model shows is if you put the effort toward owned cats, and this is in the actual code as provided by the city, that it causes the shelter population to go down to 0, meaning you would have no problem at the shelter according to the model that you're relying on to justify this program. You would actually have a much better outcome and basically 0 shelter euthanasia if you put the 20,000 yearly spay-neuters toward owned cats. And again, I'm not making that up. That's exactly what the results of the model is that you're relying upon. So I encourage you to revisit that, your alternatives analysis on the basis of the finalized model as it was revised with the final EIR. The consultants didn't put those results and plot them in the actual EIR, but they're in the model itself. And they're very illustrative as to what if you're going to accept this model as being accurate, they show that you should be picking alternative 1 instead of project alternative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Longcourt.
Dr.
Longcourt, excuse me. Caller with the last four numbers 4024. Please press *6 to unmute. And state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Good afternoon, gentlemen of animals. My name is Lizzo. Are you there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah.
go on. Please state the name and the number you'd like to speak on.
Mr. Lizzo, I'm speaking on all items for my 2 minutes and my general public comment total 3 minutes. I'd like to thank Peppa Pig for all the animal shelters he has put with no keys. Animals need keys to survive too, like homeless people living on streets can't have a bridge key or a key to a motel for freedom. But
Does
again,
this relate to an item on the agenda?
who's speaking right now? I have the
This-
floor. Who's the...
Oh, you do?
Mr. Spindler, you're not speaking on item 1 or 2, so we'll move you to
You
your general
fat
public comment.
motherfucker who killed Christ on a Christmas tree. And God hates homosexuals. What are you talking about? Stop being interrupting. I'm trying to do my best and you interrupt me and you
Thank you,
engage
Mr.
me.
Spindler.
What do you mean, Spindler Beach? Are you still there? Step up.
He's not speaking on anything in the jurisdiction of this committee, so please move on to the next speaker.
Speaker with the last four numbers 6988. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. And please state your name and the items you wish to speak on. Caller with the last four numbers 6988. Please press *6 to unmute yourself, and please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on. Okay, going on to the next speaker. Speaker with the last four numbers 3815. Please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name and your number and the number you'd like to speak on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Hi, my name is Jennifer Pimentel, and I'm the Director of LA Programs for Best Friends Animal Society, and I'd like to speak on item number 2.
Go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Koretz and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I did want to indicate that we submitted a letter of support on Tuesday, December 1st to the Office of the City Clerk. Best Friends is a national animal welfare organization with a strong presence in LA for close to 30 years. We have operated more large-scale TNR programs than any other organization in the country and know firsthand of their many benefits. We are pleased to see the publication of the final EIR for the citywide cat program, as it represents a critical step in Los Angeles becoming a no-kill community, a goal we share with many of the city's animal welfare organizations, elected officials, and residents. By almost any measure, the injunction against city-supported TNR has been a failure, the most obvious metric being the number of underage kittens coming into city shelters, up 20% alone in 2019. After more than 10 years of living with the injunction, it's clear that its impact has been devastating. We agree with the EIR's conclusion that the proposed program will produce no significant impacts and welcome the allocation of funds to sterilize 20,000 free-roaming cats in Los Angeles. Best Friends encourages the members of the PAW Committee to approve the EIR, moving it as quickly as possible to the full City Council. Thank you for your tireless efforts and ongoing commitment to make this program a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Caller with the last four numbers 6988. Please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name and the item you'd like to speak on. Caller with the last four numbers 6988. Please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, my name is Brett Yates, and I'd like to speak on agenda item 2.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm the CEO for Michelson Found Animals. Our mission of saving pets and enriching lives includes myriad programs aimed at managing outdoor cat populations, including operating one of the region's largest kitten nurseries and granting critical funds to many of the region's spay-neuter programs, including some that you already have heard from today. The injunction against the city preventing TNR efforts has been in place for a decade. and Found Animals wholeheartedly appreciates all the efforts of the city's elected leaders, departmental staff, and consultants in getting us to this point in the CEQA process. Found Animals supports the general finding of the citywide cat program, FEIR, that there will be no significant impact, and look forward to the City of LA being able to utilize resources and staff in support of PNR and community cat programs. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Caller with the last four numbers 5960, please press star 6 to unmute yourself. State your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yes, my name is Michelle Cornelius, and I'd like to speak on item number 2.
Okay, go ahead.
In 2019, LA Animal Services took in just over 13,000 kittens and euthanized nearly 2,000. A large number were likely euthanized because of a foster or rescue could not be found. I support the citywide cat program because it will reduce these numbers. The committee should also know that Best Friends is circulating a petition in support of the program, which currently has over 3,000 signatures. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last four numbers 0551, please press star 6 to unmute yourself and state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. This is Kathy Sirkness, a resident of Porter Ranch and a former volunteer from the West Valley Animal Shelter. I'd like to speak on item number 2. And first of all, say good afternoon to the committee members. I'm asking for your support on item number 2. It's been 10 years that we are waiting for the EIR report, and it's finally here. We need to do something about all the kittens that are being born out there. I know the previous caller talked about the model being flawed and that the money would be better spent using it for people who have cats and getting them spayed and neutered. But you're talking about responsible people. It's irresponsible people who are dumping their cats, and the cats are having kittens, and those kittens are growing up and having kittens. It just keeps growing and growing. So it's finally here, and it has to be done because it's irresponsible people who are doing this. You know, I've been, fostering kittens for 10 years for the shelter. And over the years, I've done about 150 kittens. I can't keep doing it. Why I love it, they're as cute as could be. It's got to end somewhere. And it's no life outside for these cats. It's a cruel life. And they keep propagating, and they're affecting other wildlife, birds, and things like that. So it doesn't make sense not to do this. It makes sense to, spay and neuter them so that they don't have an effect on wildlife, birds, and other things like that. So I strongly urge you to pass item number 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker with the last four numbers 6821, please press star 6 to unmute yourself and let us know your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Sure. My name is Gail Rath. I am a resident of the San Fernando Valley and a former volunteer for East Valley and someone who actually does PNR a few times a week. And I'm here to tell you that this program needs to be passed. There are so many cats on the street and kittens and babies in November. I think the officials actually need to go out and see how bad it is and to make sure this passes. It's 10 years too long. The cat population is overly populated. As someone who was at the shelter, believe me, the shelter is packed right now. East Valley is. So we need this even more. I beg you, please pass this. We've waited for this for years, and we truly need it to keep the cat population down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the last four numbers 8928, please press star 6 to unmute yourself and let us know your name and the items you'd like to speak on. Caller with the last four numbers 8928, please press star 6 to unmute yourself and state your name and the items you'd like to speak on. Okay, going on to the next speaker. Speaker with the last four numbers 2855. Please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Melanie Wagner, and I am speaking about item number 2.
Go ahead.
I am the executive director of Kitty Bungalow, a nonprofit 501c3 organization based in South LA, and we've been operating for a decade. Every year, we help over 2,200 cats and kittens, and many of them go through our life-saving strategies, such as TNR. The injunction against city-supported trap, neuter, and return has been devastating to the city's feline life-saving mission. And on behalf of Kitty Bungalow and the private citizens who support us, we respectfully encourage the PAW Committee to approve the citywide cat program and adopt the accompanying ordinances. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
And the last caller with the number, the last four numbers 7006. Please state your name. Actually, please press *6 to unmute. State your name and the items you'd like to speak on. Caller with the last four numbers 7006. Please press *6 to unmute. State your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yes, hello. All items, please. And the
I
general.
believe this is the second time for Mr. Spindler trying to speak. I don't think he gets that second time.
Take a look at your phone logs, dum-dum. This is first time for me.
He's calling from different numbers. Please take him off the queue.
He's been removed. Caller with the last four numbers 8769. Please press *6 to unmute yourself and please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Diana Mendoza from People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. Before I start, I just wanted to let you know that while I was on hold, the phone hung up on me 4 or 5 times. So if you're having problems with public comment, you might want to check your system.
Thank you.
All right, so while we share your same concerns about homeless cats in LA, we do have serious reservations about this program and how it will negatively affect low-income communities, wildlife, and the cats themselves. We respectfully ask you not to approve it until these issues are resolved. As it stands now, the report removes all restrictions and requirements for cat feeders, such as requiring any vet care, allowing feeding in ESAs, and it lacks any mechanisms for tracking or metrics. Without that, how will we know if it's working or where it can be improved? We're also worried that money to fund cat spay neuters will come from the Animal Sterilization Fund, which was created to help low-income individuals, a fund that GM Barnett has stated will be depleted by the end of 2020. There has to be a good financial plan in place that doesn't take help away from Angelinos in need while allowing cats to be fixed. But right now, there isn't one. There's a solution, but we've not reached it yet. So we urge you to require these adjustments be made before this moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, that's the end of the queue.
Thank you. So we will close public comment on this item and for this meeting. I'd like to ask that Jan Repstock from the Bureau of Engineering give an overview of the EIR and Animal Services, either Brenda Barnett or another representative from the department, to give us an overview of the CAT program.
Mr. Chair, I think I should read the agenda caption first.
Oh, I should, yes. Yes, you should. Thank you.
Very well. Item number 2, Department of Animal Services, Bureau of Engineering, and City Attorney reports, ordinances, and final environmental impact report. State Clearinghouse number 2013-101-008 relative to the proposed citywide CAT program and including recommendations for council action. This matter was also waived by the Budget and Finance Committee on November 24, 2020.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Repstock, if you could give us an overview.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jan Green-Rebstock, and I'm with the Bureau of Engineering's Environmental Management Group. We are administering the environmental review process for the proposed citywide CAT program. Today, I'd like to provide the committee with a brief overview of the following: a summary of the proposed project. I will highlight changes that were made based on comments from the public review process, the scope of the environmental impact report, the findings of the EIR, the subsequent filings regarding the final EIR, and let me just say that nothing new or substantive has been introduced into the record over the last few weeks, including submittals received in the last 24 hours by Urban Wildlands Group. And I will also review the actions before the committee. Okay. Major elements of the proposed project include funding for the spay and neuter of 20,000 free-roaming cats a year for the next 30 years, code amendments to broaden permitted use of the Animal Sterilization Fund and limits on the number of owned cats by individuals, a modified trap, neuter, and return program that facilitates TNR through the use of a voucher program for sterilizations, community education and outreach, and collaboration with TNR organizations. And this also includes guidelines focused on TNR best practices. There's also the creation of a City of LA working cat program where free-roaming cats are adopted to indoor or enclosed sites, and these sites self-select. And the addition of a public education and outreach campaign which raises a public awareness of the existing impacts of free-roaming cats related to wildlife, habitat, and public health. Okay, so briefly, I'll just review the changes that were made from the draft EIR to the final EIR based on the public comments received. Those focused on the modeling updates. I'll address that first. Based on the comments received, we did modify some of the model parameters. There is a master response in the final EIR that summarizes the revisions that were made, and Table 2 in the final EIR provides a comparison of the model parameters that were adjusted between the draft and the final. We also modified the program implementation guidelines. These have been revised to focus specifically on the best practices of TNR. Restrictions related to environmentally sensitive areas, feeding, and guidance for medical treatments, all of which were initially added to address the existing impacts from the existing free-roaming cat population, have been removed. Instead, a new project element that focuses on raising public awareness regarding these issues has been added. And that's the public education and outreach campaign. This would include public messaging about the biodiversity within our city, how wildlife and habitat is affected by the existing free-roaming cat population, and the impacts of feeding. And there's more information included in the final EIR about this option. And then regarding the removal of nuisance cats, we clarified in the modified TNR program that if a cat is a nuisance cat, which is defined in the final EIR as a cat about which a complaint has been made by a member of the public and where the city can provide options to help addressing their problem, those nuisance cats are not required to be returned to free-roaming status. So on to the scope of the EIR, which really looked in detail at biological issues, water quality, and human health hazards. And we used several tools and approaches to help us understand the existing conditions in the city related to city resources, the existing environmental impacts related to free-roaming cats,
and the size and location of the current and future free-roaming cat population. These scientific methods and approaches include the use of a comprehensive, systematic literature review, the creation of a population dynamics model, and identification of environmentally sensitive areas within the city. To inform our baseline assumptions and environmental impact analysis, we conducted an extensive review of the scientific literature. Through machine learning and targeted keyword searches, relevant articles were identified and reviewed, and then literature gathered from secondary citations and public scoping comments were also reviewed and incorporated into the analysis. And all of this helped to establish our CEQA baseline for the existing free-roaming cat population in the city. We also did a land cover type analysis to understand the density of free-roaming cats within the city, which is based on the availability of food, prey, water, cover, and shelter. And I want to highlight that urban, suburban land cover types were found to be the most dense, where the majority of the free-roaming cat population is expected to be. So based on this analysis of land cover type and cat density, we estimate that the current free-roaming cat population in the city is approximately 340,000. We also used a Leslie Matrix population dynamics model to help us understand what the free-roaming cat population might look like over the next 30 years and how it might change with the implementation of the proposed project. Information gathered as part of the literature review helped those models' assumptions. The effects of free-roaming cats on environmental resources are assumed to be proportional to their population size. Therefore, the result of the population dynamics model and projected population trends under the proposed project and future baseline without project are an important context on understanding how the existing effects of free-roaming cats on environmental resources could change under the proposed project. So bottom line, over the next 30 years, the proposed project would result in an approximate 13% reduction in free-roaming cats in the city. So this would be approximately 46,000 fewer cats. And you can see a summary of the modeling results in table 4.1-2 in the final EIR. Also, as part of the environmental analysis, we identified where the existing environmentally sensitive areas are within the city because we wanted to be mindful of sensitive biological resources and where they're located. There are various federally and state listed plant species and wildlife present. And you can see those areas mapped in figures 4.2-2A and 4.2-2B in the final EIR. So regarding the findings of the EIR, the proposed project would not have any significant impacts on the environment related to biological resources, water resources, or human health hazards. The remaining environmental issues were screened out in Chapter 3 of the draft as having less than significant or no adverse impacts. There's no mitigation required for this project. Just briefly touching on the subsequent filings regarding the final EIR. Since publishing the final, additional letters have been received by the city, both in support and opposition, and you heard some more of those today. Regarding letters from the Fish and Wildlife and Urban Wildlands Group, the city did prepare responses dated November 24th that were added to the council file on November 25th, and additional responses have subsequently been received from the Urban Wildlands Group and the modelers regarding the city's response. Upon review, the EIR team does not believe the submittals raise any new or substantive issues related to modeling, and we believe our model is technically sound. Regarding the number of pet sterilizations required per year under the program, I just want to touch on this briefly. The proposed project was modeled and analyzed for the environmental review, assumed 20,000 vouchers would be funded by the city's program to result in 20,000 sterilization surgeries a year. Our revised table 4.2.1 in the final EIR shows 20,000 surgeries occurring in year 1. Through year 30, the program assumes 600,000 free-roaming cat sterilizations. Arguably, there could be some flexibility regarding how many surgeries are performed in a year, with a target of 20,000 a year, if the end result is close to the 600,000 total in order of magnitude. The model assumes a consistent 20,000 surgeries a year. If the city needs to do a little more or a little less in the implementation ramp-up years due to the budget constraints or getting the program infrastructure in place, but then was able to do more in the following years to be reasonably approximate to the target and rate of those sterilizations, we would expect something approximate in the projected modeling results regarding the overall population reduction to occur at the end of the program. The final number of cats might be a bit different, but the order of magnitude is expected to be similar, especially across a 30-year horizon. This is a model and some variability is expected. Okay. So, a bad drought or fire or earthquake could also affect the outcome as well. But regardless, the city has made a good faith effort to put its arms around a controversial, challenging, and complex problem of the commons, and it offers a solution through the proposed project. So the actions pending consideration before the committee are to certify the EIR, adopt the CEQA findings, approve the proposed project, the citywide CAT program as described in the final EIR, adopt 2 ordinances amending the LA Administrative Code and Municipal Code regarding the use of animal sterilization funds for feral cat sterilizations, and to raise the limit of owned pet cats from 3 to 5 with conditions. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm ready for any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you. I think we'll open it up to questions after we also hear from Animal Services, and we'll ask you both questions. So if we could have a representative from Animal Services to discuss the overview of the program.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that there's not a lot that I can add to Dr. Reebstock's report. I have served as basically the client representative of Animal Services during this process. And all I can tell you is how much respect I have for the people on this team. Dr. Reebstock, Dr. Slater, who's been sort of a consultant throughout the entire process, through Sigmund, who's been working with us from the city attorney's office. As you know, we've also been having meetings with representatives from some council offices and the mayor's office and the chief accounting office, the CAO's office. It's been an incredible process. I think we've been about 3 years into it. The consulting firm that we hired, ICF, has been willing to recalculate and relook at anything that was ever questioned, so that we were absolutely on solid ground. And the people who spoke from the community, who know about the 20% increase in kittens every year and even a 13% increase in adult cats every year, it's only getting, the cat population is only getting larger and larger. And this is our good faith effort, and I believe it will work to try to get the cat population down to something that is more humane, more sustainable, and more life-saving for the community. So I actually would like to let the experts answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett, our General Manager of Animal Services. Any questions from members? And I don't see Mr. Lee, and there was a possibility that Mr. Blumenfield might join us as well, but I don't see him on the screen either. So, Mr. Price, any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the presentation, and this is probably touched on before, but I'm just curious again. Talk about the impact on, the birds, lizards, fauna, flowers, others. What's the negative impact or positive impact with this policy?
I can say that the draft EIR has a pretty robust discussion of the existing impacts posed by free-roaming cats on wildlife and habitat, also including predation. So that's in there. But the impacts posed from the proposed project before you, those actions are what's specifically related to the trapping, sterilization, and return of the free roaming cats that already exist within the city. And as I mentioned earlier, the majority of them are expected to be within urban, suburban areas. And there are some
in and around. We have quite a few in District 9, I know.
Yeah, and so there are expected to be some within environmentally sensitive areas within and near, but overall, with implementation of the program and sterilization of the existing population, those numbers are expected to go down over time, which would proportionally reduce the existing impacts over time. So it's really what risk is posed by the actual actions related to the TNR itself. So setting a trap, putting bait in that trap, and then transporting the animal to get it sterilized and then returning it back to where it's found. And so there were guidelines included in the program to try to manage those aspects and let people know what the existing best practices are related to TNR, including encouraging training for people who are going to engage in this, and try to avoid, placing traps in vegetated areas and so on and so forth. So those are would be included and provided people who take advantage of the voucher system. So they're reminded of what the guidelines are if they want to participate in the program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. A few questions, Dr. Rebstock. In reviewing the literature while preparing the EIR, did you or the consultants find any comparable environmental assessments regarding free-roaming cats anywhere else in the world? I mean, is this a question anywhere else?
So we didn't find any CEQA documents per se, but there are lots of studies and assessments related to free-roaming cats. And those have been conducted globally, and then we reviewed many of those studies and where the parameters seem to fit and apply within our context. We did use that to inform, from our literature review, we did use that to inform the parameters that went into our population model and to build our understanding of what the existing impacts of those of the population, what it is. So we did use that to inform our environmental analysis.
Great. Now I noticed that the restriction on sterilizing cats living in sensitive environmental areas has been removed. What was the thinking behind that?
Sure. So the guideline was initially added to reduce existing impacts from free-roaming cats because the cats are already where they're at, right, throughout the city. If they currently exist in an ESA, they would be there. Whereas the proposed project, the action is really sterilizing the existing population. So we're not putting cats where they aren't already. And so we decided to just refine the guidelines of the program to just focus on what are those project-specific actions that the city could be affecting, which is the actual practice of TNR. So we know feeding is an existing condition. It's happening right now. We know that the cats are in environmentally sensitive areas, but the majority of them we anticipate are located in urban suburban areas, as from our density land cover analysis. So again, it's just taking another look at what is the true project action, and it's not, it's the actual TNR and sterilization of the existing population. So we narrowed the program guidelines to only focus on that.
No, and I think that personally that makes sense. Removing them from the program guidelines means that they are able to continue to reproduce in higher numbers. So if we remove them from the program, in essence, we'd be deciding that this is an area that needs more cat reproduction, from my point of view, rather than less. So we would be targeting the areas where we want the cats the least for more of them in the long run. So I'm glad we made that change. the rate of population decline for the free roaming cats that's anticipated by the EIR is relatively modest. Is that because it's a very conservative estimate, or would we need to do other things to strengthen that reduction rate?
Well, if we increase the number of sterilizations or direct removals, we would see, an increase in the decline of the population. So, if there was to be more funding for the project to fund more sterilizations, then you could reasonably expect those numbers to go down faster and more.
And if we got off to a slower start or weren't able to fund the program in the first year, do we think over a 30-year period, it seems like you do from what you've said, that would be amortized and we'd be able to hit our numbers without being harmed over that lengthy period of time?
Yeah, I think reasonably, there has to be some program infrastructure, policy infrastructure in place. So I think it's reasonable to expect that you might not hit those 20,000 within the first, year or two of implementation. But if the intention is there to do that and kind of stay close to those targets over the life of the program, then it would be reasonable to expect that you would see a similar outcome from what's projected.
And I would say we'd also hope, despite our difficult financial situation, I know we're looking at Animal Services undertaking a fundraising program. Hopefully, they can raise some outside money that can go towards this task and help it get off to a quicker start than it would just based on purely the budget. How did we arrive at the figure of 20,000 sterilizations a year?
So I think that was based on the historic funding levels for the Animal Sterilization Fund when taking into account the owned and free roaming cats and the cost per surgery. So, if there seems to be that level of participation with owned cats, and then thinking at the time that there would be the funding available. What if you did a comparable program for free roaming cats, and then to see what the result of that would be? So that was kind of the genesis of that.
And that makes sense. And what are the next steps in the process for certification of the EIR and implementation of the program?
So if the committee were to decide to recommend approval, then my understanding would move forward to the full city council for action. And then we would look to Animal Services for their implementation of the program upon certification of the EIR. And I'm sure they'd have to put their budget plan and fundraising plan together, an implementation plan to implement the voucher program. It requires they put out an RFP to their existing vendors, reach out to vets that can participate in the program. So I'm sure there's some ramp up time, and I would defer to Animal Services about what their actual schedule for program implementation would be. And I'm assuming that is directly related to the funding as well.
And if Animal Services has some additional comments, particularly about what we think the ramp up time would be, even if we were in great financial shape, how long would it take for us to get to the point where we were ready to actually begin the program and start spaying and neutering feral cats?
Well, Councilmember, this is Brenda Barnett again. I'm glad to try to answer that question. As you know, with the pandemic and sort of uncertainty among staffing and that sort of thing, a lot of things are not like they used to be. For example, veterinary clinics are not just open to the public to walk in and out. They have to do social distancing and have the right PPEs on. So it takes a little bit longer. But for us, we have clinics that we would need to go out with an RFP to find out which of our current spay-neuter vendors are willing and able to do the surgery for community cats. We have a number of organizations in the community that I'm sure you're aware of who do specialize in community cats, but we have not been able to fund them because of the injunction. So once we can do business with them, then I believe we can ramp up pretty quickly. We also would want to check with the local veterinarians. We have over 50 veterinarians in the community who do surgeries for us. We would certainly want to talk with them and find out how many of them are willing and able and equipped to also do spay neuter for community cats. And in addition to that, we have a clinic that's associated with each of our shelters. It's located in the shelter. It's a private clinic, and we would need to talk with those members as well to find out what their interest is and their ability to help us with community cats. So I think we're looking at probably a good 2 to 3 months, and I say that cautiously because my staff always tells me I'm over optimistic, but I think it would be a 2 to 3 month ramp up.
Okay, and that doesn't include the time for the RFP and putting an RFP out, does it?
I believe an RFP within the veterinary community would be relatively quick, because we're not looking for just one vendor. We're looking for a number of vendors who could participate. So as long as they're licensed veterinarians that practice in the city or they're one of the clinics associated with the shelter, I don't believe that will take very long at all.
And a lot of this program, I believe, would involve volunteers doing some of the trapping and transportation, et cetera. Is that correct?
That's correct. We just, as you know, don't have the staffing to go out and do any trapping or relocating of cats or anything like that. So our main contribution, as we see it, is providing the spay neuter services to groups who have already been doing this in and around the city of Los Angeles for many years. They know what they're doing, they're good at it, and it would be foolish for us to try to get into doing something that they've already sort of figured out exactly what needs to be done and how to do it.
Very good, thank you. Let's see. I think that's all the questions I have. I do have a little bit of a statement. I know this item has been a good 15 years in the making, predating my time on the council by a few years. In July 2005, the Board of Animal Services Commissioners voted to commit to make sure that the California Environmental Quality Law requirements should be met for anything Animal Services did with regard to the concept of trap, neuter, return for free-roaming cats in Los Angeles. And unfortunately, the city's short-term performance didn't live up to that commitment, and the city was successfully sued by a consortium of biodiversity advocates and others, and that led to a court injunction against the city's active support for participation in TNR and related activities. Well, fair enough. So our interest in being able to reduce the population of rapidly breeding free-roaming cats was strong enough that we initiated compliance with the court injunction and finally took on the long and very expensive work of complying with CEQA. The results of that long and comprehensive effort are before us today. I'd like to thank Dr. Rebstock and her team at the Bureau of Engineering, as well as the city attorney's staff for their dedication to doing this EIR the right way. I'd also like to thank Mayor Garcetti and former Mayor Villaraigosa, Councilmember Blumenfield and his staff, Animal Services Department, and the Board of Animal Services Commissioners for their involvement and oversight. And I'd be remiss if I omitted the City Council for its budgetary support of the project and the city's energetic animal welfare community for their enthusiastic participation in the process, no matter on which side of the issue they came down on. And as many of us have learned over time, the challenge of an EIR is to address all the relevant issues and attempt to mitigate any real environmental impacts as defined by CEQA. The CEQA checklist and public suggestions are used to determine what those issues are, and considerable research and consideration goes into making sure they're covered in the document. The project team for the CAT program has taken some 2 years to make sure this has happened, and I believe the final EIR is a thorough document that satisfies the court injunction and complies with the law. The final EIR before us today reflects the response to approximately 1,000 public comments, a somewhat astonishing number for this kind of process. It reinforces the experience we've had before on the City Council, that controversial animal issues draw as much public attention and response as any issue we deal with in city government. We're also dealing with 2 ordinances that are part of the CAT program. The first one allows the city to spend spay and neuter trust fund monies to sterilize free-roaming cats, a central tenet of TNR. The second is my proposal to increase the household cat limit from 3 to 5, providing that cats are kept indoors. This is a long overdue idea that will help cat lovers and animal services find good homes for more cats. Good homes are defined by the conditions, care, and love provided for the cats, not by how many of them are living under one roof. It may take a village to raise a child, but this process reminds us it can take an entire city and then some to fix a free-roaming cat. After 15 years, it's time the city got on with the job of doing that, to reduce the number of cats and better protect the environment and the wildlife that the litigants sued us to protect. I believe TNR is the most effective way to do that, and it's a proposal whose time definitely has come in Los Angeles and is allowed everywhere else in the world, to my knowledge, without the kind of opposition that we faced here in LA. I would like to move an approval, and I urge an aye vote from whatever members are here at this moment. So, Mr. Clerk, if you can call the roll.
Yes, Councilmember Koretz. Councilmember Koretz.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Price.
Aye.
There you go.
That item passes unanimously.
Very good.
Item number 1. And I'd like to ask that this be passed on consent. The mayor's reappointment of Mr. Anthony Miller to the Employee Relations Board for this coming term. He has served since 2011 with incredible experience behind him, and I believe we should be grateful that he's willing to serve another term on this body. So let's take a roll call on this too.
Councilmember Koretz.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Price.
Aye.
Very
That
good.
also passes unanimously. Mr. Clerk, is there anything else on the desk?
That clears the desk.
So with nothing else before us, we are adjourned.
Very good.